Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor in the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Link right here in the description, and that's the link that you should use because it'll bypass the Apple upcharge. You'd pay the $2.99, no more, and you can cancel at any time. So check it out. Make sure you click all the way through. This gives you access to 10 channels and our exclusive stage shows. We don't put them anywhere else. Check it out. Again, it's Off the Floor. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Includes Underdog, the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to play Jimmy Butler on Monday night. We will see, but you can check out what his play is, go over, under, and across the sports spectrum. Plenty more on the app that you can check out. Use the code 5 to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, that's FIVE to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. But here's the deal. You must be at least 18 or 19 in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 in Colorado for some games, 21 in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncbgambling.org. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts, we're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. We're venting. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and 5 Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. I got a chance to do a post-game podcast last night with Alex and Brady, and we did some venting there. Now there's been some time to kind of process what happened in Orlando, which was the Heat gave up a huge lead. We're outscored 37-8 in the fourth quarter against an Orlando team that was without its 2 best young players, both of which could have been all-stars this year if they were healthy. Also without Jalen Suggs, a player who's developed into a very, very good defensive guard in this league, is arguably their 3rd best player. Mo Wagner went out after 2 minutes. He's their best bench big, and it's given the Heat problems over the years. And Wendell Carter Jr. also was ejected. So essentially, you're talking about 5 of the top 8 players in Orlando's mix, okay? Players that this is a team that's been developing, went to the playoffs last year, not available. I don't want to hear that Jimmy Butler didn't play. Does not excuse what happened in the fourth quarter yesterday, although it plays into this discussion a little bit because reliability is one of the things that has hurt this Miami Heat team over the past couple of years, and that played into it too. But again, the guys on the court should have been good enough, okay, should have done enough to close that game, and they did not. Greg, you haven't had a chance to comment on it other than on social media thus far. Heat fans have had a chance to comment on it. I'm going to read some of the comments under the Miami Heat's score post last night on Twitter and Instagram. It tends to be worse on Instagram, but they put up, the final score, and Heat they know what's kind of happened after a game like that, and Heat fans reacted, maybe overreacted in some cases by saying the world was ending, but we'll get to some of those comments as we go forward. But your thoughts on a team that is now 13-13 and had the most historic collapse I've been covering the team since 96. I can't remember anything like that.
I mean, what were they up 22 and lost? I actually ended up pivoting and doing something different for the fourth quarter and couldn't believe I came back this morning to a loss. Remember when Pat said, you want something to trend? I'm pissed. That's how I feel today. I would say I'm probably at the point where to be dead ass honest with you, if I didn't have the obligation to this show and to our listeners, I probably would take a little bit of a break from the Miami Heat right at this moment. That's the feeling last night gave me. It's just They get up 3 games above 500. Now they're back to 500. It just feels like a perpetual hamster wheel kind of scenario. I am Spo's not having his best year. I think we should acknowledge that. Nobody on the team really has shown a great deal of improvement except for Tyler, and that's a problem. You got Jimmy in and out of the lineup, obviously, all of the rumors surrounding them. I'm ready to go in a different direction. I've arrived at that place today. I know that probably sounds like I am being emotional because of the loss last night, but it's just sometimes you come to a point where you just feel it in your gut that like this thing's not going to work. It's not going to all of a sudden transform into a contender. It's not going to all of a sudden be like this magical Cinderella scenario. I'm past all that bullshit. I'm at the point where I want to see them do something different, pick a direction different. And that's just how I feel today. So like it is a situation where very rarely do I get off kilter in terms of like, I realize that there's the highs and lows of a season. I've been through really bad years where I've actually had fun watching certain elements of a season, whether it's like Caron Butler's rookie year, where you kind of knew you're going to suck, but at least you knew you had a young player coming in, or Dwayne's first year where you started out really bad, but you figured it out. This just doesn't have any of those redeeming qualities at all. And so I'm at a point where I really wish they would pick a direction and just, and likely that direction should be a step back to take a couple steps forward in the future. And I don't know why today I've arrived at that place, but here I am.
Well, I think you and I have been trending that way. I wouldn't be, I think some of the front office have trended that way. It's just a question of the right opportunity to actually fix this, which at this point, I guess they have not seen. I think you hit on it here, and this is the big thing. Obviously, we're going to do the podcast because this is what we do. We're going to analyze the team, right? Just like people have had to cover the Dolphins for years, and that's where this is frustrating because this is feeling so Dolphins-like lately, and they hate when I make that comparison because it is unfair. Over the past 3 decades, they are not the Dolphins. They have had, they have run laps around the Dolphins. They've been to 7 finals since the Dolphins won a playoff game. Okay. Actually, you can add 5 years to that, or it's 6 years, and still, that would apply. But this just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere right now. And you're right. It's just like the water finds its level, right? Didn't Coach Tony used to say that all the time? Yeah. His partner, Eric Reed. They find their level. Their level is 500. It just is like they're going to go a couple games over, then they're going to go a couple games under. They're going to find their way back to 500. They're not bad enough to sink completely. They're not. They have enough, slightly above average players, or in some cases a little bit more than that, to sink completely. But they are not good enough to have a run. This is not going to be a team that wins 8 out of 9, starts to separate themselves. It's not happening. And I don't want to say that because I want you all to listen to the podcast.
Exactly.
Right. And I don't want to be in a position where we need to create another series. Like now it's going to be the top 400 players in Heat history just to get through the damn regular season. But there is no run coming. It's not going to happen. They don't have enough availability from their best player, regardless of whether he's traded or not. Bam Adebayo has not taken any steps forward offensively. You mentioned internal and Tyler and Drew Smith's the only other one. There are 2 players on this team who appear to have gotten better from last season to this. Two, and one of them is someone that is literally closing games now, and we're begging for Spoelstra to put him back in the game, and that's Drew Smith. And this was a guy who most people did not want on the 2-way. Okay, so I don't even know if I can count Drew. He's a great story, but his ascent is in part due to others' descent. That's the problem here. Okay. Because he's doing things that other guys don't do. And, the only one is Tyler. And it's just, it's not, the ceiling with Tyler, unfortunately, is not as high as the ceiling was with Jimmy. And I don't think it's ever going to be. And that's not a knock on Tyler. But Jimmy could get into a top 5 in the league mode when he was super engaged and sort of the height of his powers, which is not something that who was the former 30th pick in the draft should be able to do, but he could. Okay, his great skill is as well. It's not there every night anymore. Okay, this week was particularly frustrating because he did do it in Detroit. See, that's what's because it's like the last tease. Okay, and I think that frustrates Heat fans more because not only did they lose that game, which again reminds Heat fans of we didn't do enough around Jimmy when he was at this elite level more often, right? So now we definitely don't have enough. But then right after he has that game, he's unavailable for 2. I mean, he's available for, a few
7 minutes.
The first one, right. Appears to sprain an ankle, but he's sick. Then he doesn't make the trip. I mean, if he doesn't play Monday night, like what kind of a stomach bug is this? And I'm just, it's just one frustration after another. And then you get beyond the 3 guys. And again, Tyler has exceeded expectations, but what is the ceiling there? Jaquez has been a serious disappointment this year. Like Ray on our playback channel said that it's like he's like car. The steering column is malfunctioning. Like these guys only want to go. He just drives into people and then tries to figure it out with a spin move that doesn't go anywhere. There's no second act right now. Like it feels like he needs another full off season to focus on other things. Jovic doesn't. I mean, he starts yesterday. He doesn't get the consistent playing time to really know what he is at this point. I know where people want us to talk about where we're going to, but it's just I don't know. I don't know what we're holding on for right now. Like it's different in the arena, and I always say this because when we leave, even when they lose, okay, when Alex and Brady and I walk down the steps at 102 or whatever, and we walk down the steps to Alex and I to shoot our video and then go to locker rooms. Even when they lose, I hear the other night, like they lost was OKC at home. And there were just people who just had a great experience. They like, going to the games is fun. Like it is, even if they lose, it's fun. Like you're you get to dress up, you get to see your favorite players, okay, or some of them sometimes. You get to see the players on the other team. They've got entertainment in the arena. You pick your food at 25 different stations. Sometimes it takes a quarter to get it, but you're there, okay? And it's a night out. It's different. And so those folks, I mean, will some still go because somebody offers them Heat tickets? Yes, okay, because it's one of the best events in town, okay? It's always going to be. But it's drudgery right now covering this team day to day.
It is.
Right? There's nothing.
But I'm still going to watch them. I mean, I say that I would take a break, but I probably won't. You know the deal. I mean, I'm invested in this way too much. But you hit on it earlier, and I think it's worth reinforcing. When you go up to Detroit and you play one of the dregs of the league, I know they're a little better this year, so they're not 7-21. They're 11-17 or whatever the hell their record is. I'm not looking it up. I'm not in the mood. But like Jimmy has the best regular season game of his tenure in Miami, and you come up short. And then you have the polar opposite where there's no Jimmy, and you kind of see what it looks like without him. And you come up short after being ahead and it looking like things were clicking. It's just this week specifically, I think, has really pushed all of the buttons for Heat fans in ways that when you follow the team very, very closely, and it's not just an event in town, it's actually something that you get vested in, have vested interest in the success of the team, etc. You start to get a little bit like, this is an unhealthy relationship I have here, right? Because you're just getting frustrated with every element of it.
I mean, where do you look right now? That's the problem. Because even those who previously were kind of beyond reproach are now getting sort of justifiably criticized for certain things. I mean, Eric Spoelstra is a good example of this. I mean, you and I agree he's the best coach in the league. It's been a rough run. I mean, there was the timeout that he didn't have. It doesn't feel like he can get a handle on the roster. I liked a lot of the stuff that came out of training camp, the focus on threes and layups and getting away from the mid-range, being more modern. But look, the small ball thing at this stage, like I think the league, Eric is usually 2 steps ahead of the league, like pace and space, positionless, all these kind of things that he's done. I mean, you look at some of the records that he's squeezed out of teams. You look back at that 16-17 team and the 30-11 run. You look at, again, what he did in the playoffs and basically with Jimmy and a bunch of undrafteds. So Jimmy Bam and a bunch of undrafteds to get to the finals. So there's been great work done here during periods of time. But I mean, philosophically though, like they need more positional size. And here's where we're going to talk about because I typically agree with Spoelstra's philosophy of making the young players earn it. It is best for their futures for them to do that. Okay. And Brady and I did a podcast about where before the season, Because I think like that's the only place to look right now. Like, and it's not where I wanted to look. I've been in favor of Spoelstra's philosophy of making him earn it, but I'm looking at the rest of the roster. I'm saying, well, playing Jaime more minutes isn't it? We've already changed Terry's role. He has a good game yesterday. It doesn't translate into anything. They've changed the starting lineup how many times? It feels like they're going to change it again, okay, because it feels like Drew Smith's going to end up in there somewhere. Highsmith now is sort of out of it, right? We've seen some of Larson. I mean, I'm just looking at like, okay, the next place to go, I guess, is where, and I have been against, again, rushing it, because to me, it's more about his development than it is about the team's needs right now. And typically, when they've made guys wait, it's been better, okay? And we saw it with Jovic last year before he's come back a little bit this year. But, I'm at the point now where I'm like, just play him. Just play him. Like, just give us something different, give us something new, but also play more to the style of the current NBA. Because when he put out that lineup yesterday of Hero, Rozier, Drew Smith, Duncan was the fourth, and I think Hawkins was out at that point, and Bam.
Yeah.
Like, you can't. I mean, it's
every other team's playing
6-4
bigger.
in under league. Yeah,
it's a situation. You're hitting on it though, because like we shouldn't have to. If we're gonna pivot to they need to play where, like that's the next step here. We're basically saying that they need to take a step back to take steps forward. So it's like, why wouldn't you philosophically look at the roster in a bigger way like that? And it starts to become about asset management, and you start to think about like, what can you get for some of these players if that's the direction we're going? And it's just tough, I guess, to be 13-13 and kind of fall into that place. You would think it would take like being 6-22 or something like that to fall in that place, but it's not. You're here because you're going up and down, and it just feels like you're not necessarily finding anything that's working. Spoelstra is kind of looking like he put Haywood Highsmith on the shelf. Then he goes to him later in the game because he's just trying to throw anything at the wall to see what sticks. And that's where it's just frustrating. And so it's like, if they're going to go to where now, which I kind of agree with you that from a fan perspective, that is a hopeful move, but also you start to feel like, at least from a size perspective, you can measure up to some of these other teams.
Right.
But then at that point, it's like, for any of the stuff that a young player is going to do that may impact negatively winning.
Yeah.
Why not take this a step further, and why not look at it more? And I guess as we get closer to the trade deadline, it's going to feed into our content machine, and that we'll have stuff to talk about, because I think you got to start looking at everyone on the roster and think about like, is it really necessary that they're here? Is there a younger player behind them we could be working in more? And how do you manage the roster from a, perspective heading to the trade deadline, when there's other teams that maybe want a Duncan Robinson or maybe want a player that is on your roster, and it's just unheat like to think like that. But yeah. I just feel like we've arrived at that place.
Well, they're never going to tear it all the way down. We know that it's not what they do, and it doesn't make sense. Although keeping their pick in the lottery this year would be good, because this looks like a great draft. Okay. And you're looking at OKC having 5 picks in this draft. And I'm just like, okay, how are you even going to compete with any of this anyway? But the thing about Ware is he's going to make mistakes. It's going to cost them games. There's no question. He doesn't do a lot of the little things at this point, but first thing, he has to be the backup 5 at this stage. How many minutes he gets, and I love Kevin. I love what Kevin's brought to this team. But again, this is not where they're at. It's just not. Like, they can't kid themselves into thinking that this team is going to win a playoff series. It's as with a group of players that are playing right now and the way that they're playing, and I don't really see a path forward for most of them to improve that much right now. If they didn't improve over the offseason, I mean, they got no internal improvement, again, from anybody but Hero or Drew Smith.
Mind-boggling.
Somebody challenged me on it. Rozier looks less comfortable than he did last year. I know he's come out of it a little bit lately. Jaquez it's a clear, and this isn't a rookie wall at this stage. This is something more significant. Okay. Jovic doesn't seem to have a place right now. Again, I think some of that is the composition of the roster, but that hasn't. Bam did not get better. He didn't get better. I mean, he just didn't. Like that's the kind of game, and this is why I put last night a lot on Bam and Tyler, because Tyler did some good things, obviously. Okay, Bam did some good things, but like you're the two, you have to take control of that thing. Like when that thing is starting to slip away, okay,
stop the bleeding.
We were watching it on playback, and we're like, oh god, And look, Matt and Alex both said Cole Anthony's going to go off on them. Like, this was just predictable, and you watch it. And again, some of this is not Bam's fault. Like, we're watching Goga Batadze went 8 for 8 last night, 8 for 8. But I would say that at least 6 of those, and I haven't watched all of them again, were because Bam was switching out and wasn't in position because he's got to cover for somebody else. Because Cole Anthony is going us. So again, we do need to give Bam a little grace on some of this stuff. But then I'm also like, okay, max player, we're in, year 8 right now. And, he and Tyler have to take the reins there. Because, again, then it gets back to, well, they can't do it without Jimmy.
Yeah.
But the Jimmy thing is not helping. I do think the Jimmy thing at this point, okay, is affecting them. I'm not saying they would be, 17-9 or whatever without it. But I mean, it's hard. He has been their heartbeat, okay? And, for better or worse, sometimes it could be an irregular heartbeat, but he has been their heartbeat for the past few years. And right now, it's like there's no way if you're following the media reports right now, which I have talked about, some of this being sort of not a non-story, but an old story, but it got into the national media space. Mm-hmm. And once it got into the national media space, even though we have reported all this stuff earlier, like literally every team they've talked about, Alex and I did a podcast 2.5 weeks ago, okay, about all of those teams. But the players didn't hear that. The players didn't see that, okay? They're not following us right. We know some people follow Five on the Floor regularly, but I don't think they're necessarily in the locker room, okay? But they follow what Shams says. They hear, when the Heat make it to First Take or any of those other shows, that does affect them. And I think that's an overhang now also. And this was the worst possible Jimmy week in that regard. The worst possible. You see what he provides when he's fully engaged. And the Heat's attitude on that is, if you would or could provide that, not that game, because that game against Detroit was ridiculous. Like we said, best game statistically in his regular season Heat career, third best game he's ever played for the Heat. They still lost to Detroit, okay? But that's part of the Heat's point. Like, okay, if you were that Jimmy more consistently, we'd have given you her extension already.
Yep.
But instead, what ends up happening is he misses the next 2 games. The team falls apart without him. That doesn't, and some Heat fans interpret that as, okay, this is why they need to give him an extension. No, this is part of why they don't give him the extension. It's both. It's why they sort of need to, if they're actually going to press forward on this thing and keep pushing forward instead of what you're talking about, which is kind of a soft reset. It's why they would need to give him the extension, but it's also why it makes sense that they wouldn't, because there is no consistency of production from him anymore, because there's no consistency of availability.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. That's why it's like a weird spot, because usually no matter what, I am not a proponent of taking the necessary steps back to have lean years, because I feel like the Heat kind of figure it out and they compete. And sometimes there's runs where just being a scrappy team is enough, where you're seeing these guys like pour it out all over the floor, and you're seeing guys play above their heads in terms of their talent level, and they're coming together as a group, Spo's getting the most out of them. All of those boxes are not being checked this season, and that's what's difficult. You start to feel like this is aimless, and that's just I guess like people, and this is what I got a lot on Twitter today, is like, oh, finally you're coming around to what we've all been thinking. And it always takes me, and I think you to a degree too, longer to say, okay, this is not going to work, because we've seen the flip side of this so many times. We've seen the fans be wrong when they think that a team is kind of flailing. But it's just now with the Jimmy noise and the fact that it's gone national, it's tough to find like even the most optimistic Heat fan, which I can be sometimes pegged as, I don't know that I can come up with the scenario or the path where you say, okay, this is all going to come together and it's going to work. I just don't see indications of that.
The only possibility at this stage, and it is a very remote possibility, is where. That's it. Like, that's the only, and that's why I've sort of come around on it when I've been a staunch opponent of the whole thing in terms of playing with Bam and all. Because at this point, I'm like, all right, maybe this will unlock Bam. Try it. Why not? Get some functional size for a change, okay, and play off of the 2 of them, and then kind of figure out who the guards are going to be. Obviously, Tyler's going to be one of them, but kind of figure it out beyond that, and again, when Jimmy plays. But I think you and I, and we'll go to the ad here, and then I want to just read some comments to close to show you that we are trying to be more rational than the fans, okay? We are trying, right? But I think the reason is that I have enormous respect for this front office. I have enormous respect. I cover the Dolphins also, okay? So I can see what bad decision making is. All right? Okay? And I have respect for what this, I mean, the continuity of this group, the forward-thinking nature of this group, the moves that they've pulled off. Being consistently competitive is very hard, okay? And they know that this market would not tolerate a deep valley that lasts for a while. It wouldn't. Okay, people move on. And so that they don't want to do that. That's not. We know how fickle South Florida fans are. Okay, and although the Heat have the most passionate younger fans because they've won. Okay, Panthers, have a little bit of a pocket in Broward, but it's always going to be a little pocket. Okay, but the Heat have basically won this town because they have been the team worth watching for the past more than quarter century. The Dolphins have not, consistently have not been worth watching. They have a playoff season. They always follow it up with by completely falling flat on their face, okay? Or they can't win haven't won a damn playoff game since December 30th, 2000. They shouldn't even really be talked about anymore. They've been so pathetic for so long, okay? So I have so much respect for what this organization does that I will always give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm struggling to see the path to make this season interesting. I just am. Like, I just feel, and it's what happens in games too. They find their level. They scored 76 points in the first half, and they score exactly half that in the second, 38.
Unbelievable.
Right?
8 points in the fourth quarter.
Right. So, at this point, I'm like, just, what? Play where? Okay. He's going to make mistakes. Fans are going to turn on him because they will, okay, when he does this or that or whatever. But he's also shown some good things when he's played, and he was a plus 24, I think, in his minutes yesterday. And I want to see. Everybody says, okay, put Bam with size and see what it looks like. All right, let's see. I mean, he needs to fill out his body. He needs to improve in a lot of different areas. But I'm struggling to find other reasons to watch. Tyler's improvement has been really fun. I'll be there Monday. We're going to do podcasts, okay?
For sure. But it's tough.
It's tough. All right. Well, we'll talk about water cleanup in Florida. You know what else is tough? Leaks in your house, in your place of business. So get the preventative maintenance. Or if you haven't done that, when you have a leak, get them over to detect it. They can do the damage assessment. If there are other problems in your home, again, or place of business, Michael Robert and his team have over 100 5-star reviews on Google. This is your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop based in Boca Raton. They service the entire Tri-County area. They also helped out after the storms in Central Florida and West Florida. They're just really good people. If they can't do the job, they will tell you. You know how hard it is to find an honest contractor. Water cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz,
they got the guts.
All right. I'm just going to read some of these. You ready? Let's just do this to close. And I'm not going to read the more offensive ones because this, Heat fans, they got in their feelings last night. But since we just had 28 minutes to vent, I'm going to give them an opportunity to vent via us. Okay. What do we got? Heat culture. This is Wade X Flash. Yes, this is the worst Heat team in history. I mean, this is where people were going last. I mean, again, I was there for 15 and 67. Another one, genuinely generational ass. That's nice. Another one, not a serious basketball team. Another one, way to bleep the bed. You took the joy out of Christmas this year, Heat. Again, I don't know about that. But this one, completely inexcusable, 2 exclamation points. That I agree with. Completely disgusting. We don't deserve to be in the playoffs after this. Well, they're not, right? Right now, aren't they in the play-in? Or are they still
they probably fell. I didn't have the guts, as we talk about guts with water cleanup of Florida, to look at the standings this morning, but I'm bet you that they are, let's see, they are 6th. So they're just outside of the play-in.
That's the problem here. Like, we almost need some of these teams in the East to kind of rise up a little bit. Because right now it's just like it doesn't matter what you do. Like it's impossible to fall much further deeper into the play-in. Like worst case scenario, they're going to be in the play-in, which is another point that for those who say trade Jimmy, they'd probably be in the play-in even if they trade Jimmy. Mm-hmm. They'll make the play-in anyway. So that's why everybody's like, okay, get the assets. But again, that's a larger issue and a bigger discussion about what direction you go there. This one. Bum-ass jive turkeys, another one, you're embarrassing us. And then this one, I'm so sick of 4 players under 6'6" on the court with Bam. I did agree with that. last night. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze myself to death here. But anyway, utterly pathetic. I'm done. Rest of the season, I'm done. Effing trade everyone. Embarrassing. This team is embarrassing. It's time to make a move. FOH. I mean, again, you get the point. Fans are frustrated. And they're spoiled to a degree. We've talked about that too. This is not like Sacramento not making the playoffs for 15 years. But there is a certain standard that fans hold the Heat to because they hold themselves to that standard. And
Exactly.
So we're going to try to hold them to that standard too. And the product right now is not great. It's not great. And it doesn't, again, it looked great for a half last night, but it's not great consistently enough. It's not good consistently enough. And I'm with you at this point. Like, I think everything at this stage, every idea should be on the table. Every idea. Okay. People are going to get into semantics. Who's untouchable? Who's not untouchable? I think every idea, and it's why this time the Heat have been very transparent about this, which is unusual in my experience. Okay, they'll tell you. People who will never tell you stuff before. They'll say, "Yeah, we're listening." No, even with the Jimmy thing, we're listening. I mean, we're not denying that we're listening, and we said they're listening. Okay, and so Shams, that part of it, yes, that's true. Okay, they're listening, but of course they're going to listen because they have to know what their options are. Doesn't mean they've been shopping Jimmy.
Remember when they shut down the Kyle Lowry rumors so quick? They put out statements about it. You don't see any of that happening. That's telling to me.
Well, with Harden too.
Yeah.
Remember a week before the regular season, and we were reporting certain things, and so I didn't get invited to the text string on that one. There's a gif of Cartman getting thrown under a bus that I used on Twitter. Yeah, I mean they will come. In this case, they're not denying it because they have to. It's the cap, it's the tax, it's more the second apron, all that kind of stuff. That obviously we talk about in that context, but it's also about making a decision about whether you want to pay a 35-year-old a whole lot of money when he can still be great, but he's not available all the time, and the team seems to be going really nowhere. Like, you have to have all options on the table. Like, if that's in any business, and so I don't blame them for listening. I don't blame Jimmy if there's some frustration here with what the team looks like. I didn't blame the Heat when there was some frustration with Jimmy not being available enough. I just think everybody's frustrated right now because, again, it just doesn't seem like this is going somewhere. And maybe there'll be something that emerges. Look, nobody thought Hassan Whiteside was going to start having triple doubles with blocks when they picked him up. Anything can happen in this league, okay? But it just does not look like a team. If you told me that this team ever won more than 4 games in a row this year, I would be stunned. I think the most they'll win is 4 in a row.
Usually throughout a season, fans will start to look for players on alternate teams and say, if they just traded for him, that would change the mix here. And I think that we're at a point where, because the Heat have traded for Terry Rozier and it didn't work out, or in other scenarios, it just hasn't worked out to get deals done. Like, do you see Heat fans changing their stance if Jeremy Grant all of a sudden was acquired? I don't. I think that we're kind of where we are no matter what. And that I think is just disconcerting.
Worst thing they can do is give up a future asset to try to patchwork this team. I think you and I are in agreement on that. I think they're in agreement on that. I don't think they're going to do that. The Rozier thing was the stab. It hasn't worked out. I thought it would work out, so I was wrong about that one too. I think we were in favor of the trade and move the Lowry's contract. Hasn't worked out. I don't think you do that again. I think of all the directions, that would be the one that I would be like, no. They could pretty much pick anything else. Okay, if they want, they're not going to strip it down completely. We know that. So it's not even an option for them, not the way that they think. But the option of trying to patchwork it by trading an asset, no. To me, it's okay. You're either trying to, if you're deciding to go forward with Jimmy, which I think is unlikely beyond the season, ultimately, even though I've said there's a way to do it, I think a way that the Heat might be open to doing it, which is to try to, more years at less money per year, give them a little bit more flexibility. We've discussed it. But there's a way to try to get the team better, but it's not with a trade deadline move right now where you trade a future asset. I don't think it's that. And the other thing is just to kind of soft reset it, which I think we'll have to get into more specifics about what that looks like, because I think people ask us what that means. But it means acknowledging that this is not going to work as is, You don't want to throw more good money after bad, and transactionally or in other ways. But you're sort of sidestepping to a different place to find.
It means trade Jimmy.
Probably does. It probably does. Just like run it back, just like all those years. And this is why, again, sometimes the Heat organization is right about these things, and fans have to acknowledge it. When I was always asked, what does run it back mean? What does it mean to the fans? I said, run it back means you didn't trade Tyler. That's how the fans looked at it, right? Like, because there were only 4 players who have been here since the beginning of this build: Duncan, Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam. Duncan's been like almost traded like 55 times, literally, for his number. Bam, we knew was not on the market. Jimmy, they weren't looking to move in any way until this year, even listening until this year. It was always, the idea of if you're running back, it's because, okay, you brought Tyler back. And by the way, and Tyler's been the biggest bright spot on the team this year. So what do fans know? What do we know? I just hope the organization knows something, because this has been hard to watch lately. All right, thanks to Greg. Thanks to our sponsors, Water Cleanup of Florida, and also Underdog. Use the code FIVE. I'm going to do a podcast with Brady in the morning about why the internal improvement has not happened this year, because this is unusual for a Heat team to have so many guys stay the same or seemingly get worse. It's been a lot of them this season. All right, have a good one.